The world of Kelith was unlike any other. It existed under a sky that never fully brightened, bathed in the eerie glow of two distant suns, locked in an eternal dance. Shadows stretched long and deep across its surface, where towering fungal forests rose like ancient sentinels. These trees weren't ordinary, they pulsed faintly with bioluminescent light, casting strange patterns on the ground below. The air was thick with spores, making every breath feel heavy, as if the planet itself didn't want outsiders there. Humans had stumbled upon Kelith decades ago, during one of their many exploratory missions into uncharted space. At first they thought it might hold valuable resources or even potential for colonization, but they quickly learned how wrong they were. The planet wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. Its dominant species, the Vorthoks, were monstrous creatures standing over 12 feet tall, with jagged claws, armored hides, and glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce through the gloom. They hunted relentlessly, driven by instincts humans couldn't begin to understand. To most aliens, humans were seen as little more than pests, fragile, slow-moving, and ill-equipped compared to the advanced technology wielded by other races. Humanity's presence on Kelith was ridiculed. Other species often joked about how humans clung to life here, scavenging scraps while trying and failing to avoid becoming prey. To them, humans were weaklings, unworthy of respect or attention. And so, when rumors spread of a lone alien child lost among the Vorthok's hunting grounds, no one expected humans to care. After all, why would such fragile beings risk their lives for someone not even of their own kind? But then, something unexpected happened. Deep within the fungal forest, a small figure stumbled forward, her tiny hands clutching at the rough bark of a glowing tree trunk for support. Her name was Leary, though no one knew this yet. She was barely 6 years old by Earth standards, though her species aged differently. Her skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim light around her, and her large, almond-shaped eyes darted nervously from shadow to shadow. She was terrified. Leary had been abandoned, left behind by her own people because she was considered too weak to survive. In her culture, strength was everything, and those deemed unfit were cast aside without hesitation. For days, she had wandered alone, surviving on whatever scraps of food she could find. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but fear gnawed harder at her heart. Every rustle of leaves, every distant growl, made her freeze in terror. She knew the stories of the Vortex, everyone did. They were monsters who spared no one, least of all a defenseless child. As night fell, or what passed for night on Kelith, the darkness grew thicker, swallowing the feeble glow of the fungi. Leary curled up against the base of a tree, tears streaming silently down her face. She whispered a phrase over and over again, as if it might summon some unseen protector. "Don't be scared. I'm here." Unbeknownst to her, she wasn't entirely alone. Far away, near the edge of the forest, a group of human scavengers worked tirelessly to load supplies onto their battered transport ship. Their leader, a grizzled man named Elias Kane, stood apart from the others, staring into the depths of the woods. He'd heard whispers among the locals about a lost child somewhere out there, left to die among the monsters. Most dismissed it as just another tragedy of Kelith, a cruel reminder of how harsh survival could be. But Elias couldn't shake the thought. Something about it tugged at him, deep down in a place he rarely acknowledged. But one of his crew members called out, breaking his reverie, "We need to move soon. If we stay much longer, the Vortex will sniff us out." Elias nodded, absently, still gazing toward the forest. Then, almost as if answering his unspoken question, a faint cry echoed through the trees, a sound so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. But Elias recognized it immediately. It was the sound of someone crying for help. Without saying a word, he grabbed a flashlight and slung a rifle over his shoulder. His crew stared at him incredulously. "What are you doing?" one of them asked. "You can't seriously be thinking of going in there." Elias turned back, his expression unreadable. "I don't leave kids behind," he said simply, before stepping into the shadows. As he disappeared into the forest, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew the odds of finding anyone alive in there were slim, but none of them dared to stop him. There was something about Elias' acquired determination, a stubborn streak of humanity that made arguing pointless, and so the stage was set. A fragile alien girl, lost and alone among monsters, and a human scavenger willing to risk everything to save her. Neither knew what lay ahead, but both would soon discover that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can spark the greatest changes. Somewhere in the distance, a Vorthok let out a low guttural roar. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The fungal forest swallowed Elias whole as he ventured deeper, the faint glow of his flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with spores that clung to his lungs and made breathing a chore. Every sound, the creaking of the trees, the distant rustle of unseen creatures, set his nerves on edge. He'd faced danger countless times before on Kelith, but this was different. This wasn't about survival for himself. It was about saving someone who couldn't save herself. As he moved cautiously forward, Elias's mind raced. What would he do if he found the child? Could he even protect her from the Vorthax long enough to get back to the ship? His rifle felt woefully inadequate against the armored beasts. But he pushed those thoughts aside. Worrying wouldn't help now. All that mattered was finding her. The cry came again, a soft, broken whimper that barely carried over the hum of the glowing fungi. It was closer this time, almost directly ahead. Elias froze, listening intently. Then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of movement nearby. Something or someone was out there. "Hello," he called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not going to hurt you." There was no response, only silence. Elias took another cautious step forward, his flashlight beam sweeping across the base of a massive tree, and then he saw her. Leary sat huddled against the trunk, her shimmering skin blending eerily with the bioluminescent glow around her. Her large eyes widened in terror as the light fell on her, and she instinctively shrank back, clutching her knees to her chest. She looked impossibly small, fragile even by human standards. For a moment, Elias simply stared at her, struck by the sheer vulnerability in her posture. "It's okay," he said gently, lowering his flashlight so the beam didn't blind her. "I'm here to help." Leary didn't move, her gaze darting between him and the shadows behind him. To her, humans were as alien as anything else on Kelith. She had never seen one up close before, let alone trusted one. But something in Elias's tone, come steady, reassuring, made her hesitate. Slowly, she uncurled herself just enough to peek out from behind her arms. Elias knelt down, careful not to make any sudden movements. "You're safe now," he said, though he knew she probably didn't understand him. Still, he hoped his body language would convey some sense of safety. He held out a hand, palm open and facing upward, a universal gesture of peace. For several tense moments, Leary remained frozen, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Then, tentatively, she reached out a tiny hand toward him. Their fingers brushed, briefly, and Elias felt a strange warmth pass between them, not physical heat, but something deeper, as if their connection transcended species. In that instant, Leary seemed to decide he wasn't a threat. She scrambled to her feet, clutching tightly to his sleeve as if afraid he might disappear. Elias smiled faintly, though his relief was short-lived. They weren't safe yet, not by a long shot. Back near the edge of the forest, Ilias's crew waited anxiously. The scavenger team had finished loading the supplies onto their ship and was preparing to leave when they noticed their leader still hadn't returned. "He's insane," muttered Gregor, the youngest member of the crew. "No way he's coming back alive." "Shut up," snapped Mira, the medic. "If anyone can pull this off, it's Kane. You know how stubborn he is." Gregor rolled his eyes but didn't argue further. Instead, he glanced nervously toward the forest, where the faint glow of Ilias's flashlight could occasionally be seen flickering between the trees. "Still, we should go after him," he said. "What if he needs backup, and what if we all end up dead instead?" countered Jox, the engineer. "We stick to the plan. If Kane doesn't come back within the hour, we take off without him." Myra frowned but didn't protest. She knew Jox was right. They couldn't afford to lose the ship, not with fuel reserves already running low. But she couldn't shake the unease knowing at her gut. Something about tonight felt wrong. Meanwhile, Elias and Leary were making slow progress through the forest. The girl clung to him tightly, her small frame trembling with every step. Despite her fear, she seemed determined to keep moving, her wide eyes scanning the shadows for signs of danger. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, freezing them both in place. Ilias's heart sank as he turned his flashlight toward the source of the noise. A pair of glowing red eyes emerged from the darkness, followed by the hulking silhouette of a Vorthok. Its jagged claws scraped against the ground as it stepped into the light, its massive form casting a menacing shadow. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, his mind racing. Shooting the creature outright was risky, it might attract more Vorthoks, but standing still wasn't an option either. He needed a distraction, something to buy them time. Then he remembered the flares in his pack. Quickly, he pulled one out and ignited it, throwing it hard into the bushes off to the side. The flare burst into brilliant white light, momentarily blinding the Vorthok and sending it stumbling backward with a deafening roar. Seizing the opportunity, Elias scooped Leary into his arms and ran, dodging between the trees as fast as his legs could carry him. Behind them, the Vorthok recovered quickly, its roar shaking the ground as it gave chase. More roars joined in from other directions, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. The forest had become a death trap. Elias gritted his teeth, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. He could feel Leary's heartbeat pounding against his chest, matching the frantic rhythm of his own. Whatever happened next, he vowed silently, he wouldn't let her go. They burst into a clearing just as the first droplets of rain began to fall, washing away the spores that clouded the air. In the distance, the faint outline of the ship loomed, like a beacon of hope, but between them and safety lay a gauntlet of predators and time was running out. As the Vortex closed in, Elias realized that surviving this night would require more than brute force or quick thinking. It would demand something uniquely human, the ability to adapt, to care, and to fight for something greater than oneself. And for the first time, the aliens watching from afar began to wonder if perhaps humanity wasn't as weak as they'd always assumed. The rain intensified, drenching the forest in a cold, relentless downpour. Elias stumbled through the clearing, his boots sinking into the muddy ground as he clutched Leary tightly to his chest. Her tiny hands gripped his jacket like a lifeline, her breath coming in shallow gasps that mirrored his own labored breathing. Behind them, the guttural roars of the vortex grew louder, closer, their glowing red eyes cutting through the darkness like beacons of death. Elias's mind raced. The ship was still too far away, nearly half a mile, and the predators were gaining ground fast. He knew they wouldn't make it if he kept running straight for the ship. There had to be another way. Some clever trick or diversion that could buy them enough time to escape. "Hold on tight," he muttered to Leary, though she couldn't understand him. She buried her face against his shoulder, trusting him completely despite the chaos around them. That trust sparked something deep within Elisa, fierce determination to protect her at all costs. He spotted a narrow ravine up ahead, its edges lined with jagged rocks and thick vines. It wasn't much, but it might slow the vortex down. Without hesitation, Elias veered sharply toward it, slipping and sliding across the slick terrain. Reaching the edge, he paused just long enough to scan the area before jumping down into the ravine, landing hard on the uneven surface below. For a moment, there was silenced only the sound of rain pounding against the earth and his ragged breathing. Then came the thunderous crashes above as the vortex reached the edge of the ravine, their massive forms hesitating momentarily before leaping down after them. Elias cursed under his breath and pushed forward, navigating the treacherous path as quickly as he dared. Leary whimpered softly, clearly frightened by the sudden jolts and splashes, but she didn't cry out. Instead, she pressed closer to him, her small body trembling with fear, yet somehow resilient. Back near the ship, Mira paced anxiously while Jox and Gregor argued over what to do next. The hour mark had passed, and Elias still hadn't returned. "We can't wait any longer," Jox insisted, his voice tense with frustration. "If we don't leave now, we'll run out of fuel before we even reach orbit, and if we leave without Kane, we're no better than those monsters out there," Mira shot back, her fists clenched at her sides. "He risked everything to save that kid. We owe him." Gregor looked torn, glancing between the two of them. "What are you suggesting? Go out there ourselves? We'd never survive." Before anyone could respond, a faint sound caught their attention, the unmistakable roar of a vorthok echoing from the direction of the forest. All three froze, staring into the gloom as flashes of movement became visible through the trees. Something or someone was heading straight for them. "It's Kane," Mira exclaimed, grabbing a rifle and rushing toward the tree line. Jox and Gregor exchanged panicked looks but followed reluctantly, knowing they couldn't abandon their leader not entirely. Meanwhile, Elias reached the end of the ravine and scrambled up onto solid ground, his muscles burning with exhaustion. He glanced back to see one of the vorthoks closing in, its claws scraping against the rock wall as it tried to climb after them. He needed a plan, and fast. That's when he noticed the fungal trees nearby. Their bioluminescent glow pulsed faintly, responding to the vibrations caused by the storm. An idea began to form in his mind. If he could trigger a reaction strong enough, maybe he could create a distraction or even disable the pursuing beasts. Elias set Leary down gently behind a cluster of boulders, crouching beside her. "Stay here," he said firmly, meeting her wide-eyed gaze. "Don't move until I come back for you." She nodded hesitantly, clutching her knees to her chest as he turned and sprinted toward the nearest tree. Pulling out a flare from his pack, he ignited it and wedged it into a crack in the trunk. The flare sizzled and popped, sending bursts of bright light cascading over the fungi. Almost immediately, the tree reacted violently, its glow intensifying until it emitted a blinding flash that illuminated the entire area. The effect rippled outward, spreading to the surrounding trees like wildfire. One by one they erupted in dazzling bursts of light and energy, creating a chain reaction that sent shockwaves through the forest. The vortex howled in confusion, stumbling backward as the intense light disoriented them. Seizing the opportunity, Elias dashed back to Leary and scooped her up once more. Together they ran as fast as they could toward the ship, the forest erupting in chaos behind them. As they emerged from the trees, Mira spotted them first. "There!" she shouted, waving frantically to catch Elias's attention. Jox and Gregor hurried to help, firing warning shots into the air to keep the remaining vorthoks at bay. Elias reached the ship just as the engines roared to life, the ramp lowering to let them aboard. He collapsed inside, cradling Leary protectively, as Mira slammed the controls shut. Within seconds, the ship lifted off the ground, ascending rapidly into the stormy sky. Breathing heavily, Elias leaned back against the wall, finally allowing himself to relax for the first time since stepping foot into the forest. Leary peeked up at him, her shimmering eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. For a brief moment, their gazes locked, and Elias felt a profound sense of connection not just to her, but to something greater. Humanity wasn't defined by strength or power. It was defined by acts of compassion, courage, and ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, leaving Keleth's twilight world behind, Elias realized this rescue mission had changed more than just one little girl's fate. It had planted a seed of revelation that humanity's greatest strength lay not in weapons or technology, but in its ability to care, adapt, and persevere. And somewhere out there among the stars, others would begin to take notice. The ship soared through the atmosphere, leaving Keleth's stormy skies behind. Inside, the cabin buzzed with a mix of relief and tension. Elias sat slumped against the wall, his soaked clothes clinging to him as he tried to catch his breath. Leary remained in his arms, her small frame trembling less now but still holding onto him tightly. She didn't speak, perhaps she couldn't, but her wide eyes conveyed everything: gratitude, fear, and an unspoken trust that Elias hadn't let her down. Myra knelt beside them, checking both Elias and Leary for injuries. "You're insane," she said softly, though there was no anger in her voice, only. "Or what were you thinking, going out there alone?" Elias managed a weak smile. "I wasn't about to leave her behind." Jox and Gregor exchanged glances from across the cabin, their earlier frustration melting into reluctant admiration. They had seen Elias do reckless things before, but this was something else entirely. It wasn't just bravery. It was humanity at its royster, refusal to turn away when someone needed help. As the adrenaline began to fade, reality set in. The ship's fuel gauge flickered dangerously low. They had barely escaped Keleth alive, and now they faced another challenge: finding a safe place to refuel without attracting unwanted attention. Pirates, scavengers, and hostile alien factions roamed the nearby systems, making any landing risky. But there was another issue brewing, one none of them could ignore. Lear's eye shifted slightly in Elias's lap, looking around the cramped cabin with curiosity. Her shimmering skin caught the dim light of the control panel, casting faint reflections on the walls. She pointed toward the viewport, where the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly beyond. Her expression was one of wonder, but also sadness, as if she understood what she'd lost. "She doesn't belong here," Myra murmured, watching Leary closely. "We saved her life, but now what? She's not human. We don't even know how to communicate with her." Elias sighed, running a hand over his face. "One step at a time. First, we need to get somewhere safe. Then we'll figure out what to do next." Hours later, the crew decided to head for a remote outpost orbiting a dying star, known as Drift 7. It was a lawless hub frequented by traders, mercenaries, and refugees, people who didn't ask too many questions. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than nothing. When they arrived, the station loomed like a mechanical monolith against the backdrop of the crimson sun. Its jagged silhouette, it seemed almost alive, pulsating with faint lights that hinted at activity within. Docking went smoothly enough, though Jox kept one hand on his weapon, ready for trouble. As they disembarked, carrying supplies and leading Leary cautiously by the hand, they drew curious stares from the other inhabitants of Drift 7. Humans weren't coming here, but an alien child accompanied by humans. That was unusual and suspicious. A group of rough-looking aliens approached them near the docking bay. One of them, a hulking creature with 4 arms and metallic implants covering half its body, sneered at them. "What's this? You lot pick up stray pets now?" he growled, his voice distorted by some kind of translator device embedded in his throat. Elias stepped forward protectively, placing himself between Leary and the strangers. "Mind your business," he said firmly. "We're just passing through." The alien chuckled darkly, leaning closer. "Passing through, huh? Funny thing is, word travels fast around here. Heard rumors about a rescue mission on Keleth. Dangerous work for soft-skinned humans." His gaze flicked to Leary, narrowing. "And I'm guessing this little gem has something to do with it." Tension crackled in the air. Mira tightened her grip on her rifle while Gregor fidgeted nervously behind her. Even Jox looked uneasy, though he kept his stance steady. Before anyone could escalate the situation further, Leary did something unexpected. She stepped forward, breaking free of Elias's protective grasp, and raised her hands toward the alien. Her shimmering skin flared brightly, bathing everyone nearby in a warm golden glow. For a moment, the entire area fell silent, all eyes fixed on the strange display. The lead alien took a step back, visibly startled. "What in the void?" he muttered, lowering his weapon slightly. The others followed suit, their aggressive postures softening. Elias blinked, stunned. He turned to Leary, who stood calmly amidst the chaos, her glowing form radiating a sense of calm and peace. Whatever she had done, it wasn't just a trick, it felt meaningful, almost spiritual. "Okay," Jox whispered under his breath, breaking the silence. "That's new." Later, after securing a temporary shelter inside the station, the crew gathered to discuss what had happened. Myra tended to Elias's minor wounds while Gregor tinkered with the ship's diagnostics. Jox paced restlessly, occasionally glancing at Leary, who sat quietly in the corner, observing them with quiet curiosity. "That glow thing she did," Gregor started hesitantly. "Do you think it means something? Like, maybe she's special?" "Special? What doesn't cover it?" Myra replied, shaking her head. "She stopped those thugs cold. No words, no weapons, just light." Elias leaned back against the wall, deep in thought. He remembered the way Leary had trusted him back on Keleth, the way she clung to him despite having no reason to believe he wouldn't harm her. There was something extraordinary about her, something beyond language or logic, and whatever it was, it had already begun to change the way others saw humanity. "You realize what this means, right?" Jock said suddenly, stopping mid-pace. "If word gets out about her, we won't be dealing with petty thugs anymore. Every faction in this quadrant will come knocking. They'll want to study her, exploit her aura. Worse." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we make sure that doesn't happen. We keep her safe." "But for how long?" Mira asked softly. "This isn't our fight, Kane. We're scavengers, not guardians." Elias looked at Leary, who was tracing patterns on the floor with her finger, seemingly oblivious to the weight of their conversation. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But tonight changed something for all of us. We can't walk away from this. Not now." His words hung heavy in the air, resonating with each member of the crew in different ways. They had always thought of themselves as survivors, people scraping by on the fringes of society. But rescuing Leary had awakened something different, a sense of purpose, however fragile it might be. Outside, the crimson sun cast long shadows across the station, its dying light painting the world in hues of red and gold. Somewhere out there, among the stars, forces far greater than any of them were beginning to stir. Forces that would soon demand answers and perhaps reveal truths about humanity itself. For now, though, they had each other, and sometimes that was enough. The tension aboard the ship grew thicker with each passing hour. After their close encounter at Drift 7, Elias and his crew decided to leave the station as quickly as possible. The glowing display Leary had performed might have diffused the immediate threat, but it also drew unwanted attention. Whispers spread like wildfire through the outpost's corridors. Tales of a mysterious alien child with strange abilities accompanied by humans who dared to defy the odds on Keleth. It wouldn't take long for those whispers to reach ears far more dangerous than petty thugs as they prepared for departure. Myra patched up Elias's injuries while Jox and Gregor worked tirelessly to secure additional fuel supplies from black market dealers. The process was tense. Every transaction carried the risk of betrayal or ambush. They moved cautiously, keeping Leary hidden in the shadows of the ship whenever they ventured outside. But even then, her presence seemed to radiate an aura of intrigue that others couldn't ignore. One evening, as the crew gathered around the dimly lit control panel to plan their next move, an urgent transmission crackled over the comm system. A distorted voice echoed through the cabin, cold and mechanical. "Unidentified vessel carrying non-human cargo detected. Stand down and prepare for boarding." Everyone froze. Gregor instinctively reached for his weapon, while Mira's fingers hovered nervously over the ship's controls. Elias leaned forward, staring at the blinking red alert on the console. Whoever or whatever was tracking them wasn't playing games. "They know about Leary," Jock said grimly, gripping the edge of the table. "This isn't just some random patrol. Someone tipped them off." Elias clenched his jaw, his mind racing. If they allowed themselves to be boarded, there would be no escape. Leary would be taken, dissected, or worse. He glanced toward the corner where she sat quietly, watching the chaos unfold with wide, unblinking eyes. She didn't understand the specifics of their predicament, but she could sense the gravity of the moment. "We're not letting them get her," Elias declared firmly, standing up. "Not now, not ever." The unidentified ship closed in rapidly, its sleek design suggesting advanced technology far beyond what Ilias's battered transport could handle. Outmatched and outgunned, the crew scrambled to come up with a plan. Mira plotted a risky course through a nearby asteroid field, hoping to lose their pursuers among the jagged rocks. Meanwhile, Jox rigged makeshift decoy drones to create distractions if needed. Leary remained eerily calm throughout the preparations, almost as if she trusted Elias implicitly to protect her. At one point, she walked over to him and placed her small hand on his arm. Her skin shimmered faintly, casting soft golden light across his face. For a brief moment, Elias felt a surge of clarity, a quiet reassurance that he was doing the right thing. "Whatever happens," he told the crew, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "We stick together, we don't give up." With that, they launched into action. The engines roared to life as Myra guided the ship into the heart of the asteroid field. Jagged rocks loomed ominously all around them, forcing her to navigate with precision. Behind them, the enemy ship followed relentlessly, firing warning shots that sent shudders through the hull. "Hold on," Mira shouted as she executed a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding a collision with a massive asteroid. The maneuver threw everyone off balance, but it bought them precious seconds. Jox deployed the decoy drones, which emitted false heat signatures designed to confuse the enemy's sensors. For a fleeting moment, it seemed to work. The pursuing ship broke formation, splitting its focus between the real target and the decoys, but it was only a temporary reprieve. One of the drones exploded in a burst of light, drawing the enemy's attention back to the fleeing transport. "They're still on us," Gregor yelled, his voice tinged with panic. "What do we do now?" Elias turned to Leary, who stood silently near the viewport, gazing out at the chaos beyond. Something about her demeanor gave him an idea, one born of desperation but fueled by hope. "Leary," he said gently, kneeling beside her, "can you do that glow thing again, like you did back at the station?" Her large eyes met his, filled with understanding. Slowly, she nodded and stepped closer to the viewport. As she raised her hands, her entire body began to shimmer with radiant light, brighter and more intense than before. The glow spilled out into space, bathing the asteroids and the pursuing ship in waves of golden energy. To everyone's astonishment, the enemy vessel suddenly veered off course, its movements erratic. Sensors aboard the transport picked up unusual readings, systems failures, disrupted communications, and complete disarray within the enemy ranks. "What is happening?" Mira whispered, staring at the readouts in disbelief. "It's her," Elias murmured, awe evident in his voice. "She's doing this." The enemy ship retreated, disappearing into the void as quickly as it had arrived. Silence fell over the cabin, broken only by the hum of the engines and the sound of labored breathing. No one spoke for several moments, too stunned to process what had just occurred. Finally, Jocks let out a shaky laugh. "Well, I guess we found our secret weapon." But Elias wasn't laughing. He looked at Leary, his expression a mixture of gratitude and concern. Whatever power she possessed, it came at a cost. He could see the exhaustion etched into her features as she slumped against the wall. She had saved them, but at what price? Later, as they emerged from the asteroid field and set a course for safer territory, the crew reflected on what had happened. They had faced overwhelming odds and survived not through brute force or superior weaponry, but through unity, ingenuity, and something deeper, humanity itself. Their actions hadn't been driven by profit or self-preservation. They had fought for someone else, someone vulnerable and defenseless, and yet the victory felt bittersweet. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, many of which were far greater than anything they'd encountered so far. Protecting Leary wouldn't be easy, especially as word of her abilities continued to spread. Powerful factions would stop at nothing to capture her, and the crew knew they couldn't fight forever. Still, amidst the uncertainty, one truth became clear. Humanity's strength lay not in dominance or conquest, but in compassion and resilience. In protecting Leary, they had proven that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, changing perceptions and inspiring others. Somewhere deep within the cosmos, the seeds of change had been planted. And though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, Elias and his crew resolved to keep moving forward. Together, the aftermath of their escape left the crew in a state of uneasy calm. Leary lay curled up on a makeshift cot in the corner of the cabin, her shimmering glow dimmed but still faintly visible. Her small chest rose and fell with labored breaths, exhaustion etched into every line of her delicate frame. Whatever energy she had expended during the confrontation with the enemy ship had taken a toll, and Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something profound, something far beyond their understanding. Myra knelt beside Leary, checking her vitals as best she could without proper medical equipment. "She's stable," Myra said softly, though her brow remained furrowed with concern. "But I don't know how long this will last. We're flying blind here." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on Leary's peaceful face. He felt a pang of guilt for dragging her into this mess, even if it hadn't been his choice initially. She trusted him implicitly, relying on him to keep her safe, yet he knew they couldn't protect her forever. The galaxy was too vast, its dangers too numerous, but giving up wasn't an option. Not while there was still hope. "We need answers," Jocks interjected, pacing nervously near the control panel. "We can't just keep running blindly. Sooner or later, someone stronger than us is going to catch up and we won't have another miracle to save us." Gregor, who had been unusually quiet since the encounter, finally spoke up. What if the key isn't about hiding? What if it's about showing them who we are?" Everyone turned to look at him, surprised by the suggestion. Gregor wasn't known for deep philosophical musings. He usually stuck to practical matters like engineering and repairs, but now, his voice carried a weight that demanded attention. "What do you mean?" Elias asked, leaning forward slightly. "I mean," Gregor continued, gesturing toward Leary. "She showed those aliens mercy back there. Not fear, not aggression, mercy, and it worked. It stopped them cold. Maybe that's what humanity does. Best we don't fight because we're strong. We fight because we care. If we want to stand a chance against whoever comes next, we need to double down on that." Mira frowned thoughtfully. "You're saying we should confront them instead of hiding?" "No," Gregor replied, shaking his head. "I'm saying, who show them why they shouldn't mess with us or her. Humans aren't weak because we're fragile. We're strong because we stick together, because we value life, even lives that aren't ours." Elias mulled over Gregor's words, a spark of inspiration igniting within him. Perhaps Gregor was right. Running and hiding might buy them time, but it wouldn't solve the bigger problem. To truly protect Leary and themselves, they needed to change the narrative. They needed to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten: humanity's capacity for empathy and ingenuity. Their opportunity came sooner than expected. A few days later, while navigating through a remote star system, they received another transmission. This one was different from the previous threats. It wasn't hostile, merely curious. The sender identified themselves as representatives of the Galactic Concord, a coalition of species tasked with maintaining peace across the stars. Their message was brief but clear: Reports indicate your vessel harbors an individual of significant importance. Request permission to initiate contact. The crew exchanged wary glances. The Galactic Concorde was powerful, but it wasn't inherently malicious. Still, trusting them would be risky. Once word got out about Leary's abilities, there would be no turning back. Let's hear them out, Elias decided after a moment of deliberation. If nothing else, it'll give us a chance to explain things on our terms. When the Concorde's envoy arrived, a sleek, silver ship adorned with intricate symbols, the tension aboard the transport was palpable. The envoy sent a single representative to board their vessel, an alien named Vera, whose elongated limbs and crystalline skin gave her an otherworldly appearance. She moved gracefully, her movements almost hypnotic, and her eyes glowed faintly. As she scanned the room, "You've caused quite a stir," Vera began, her voice melodic yet firm. "Stories of your actions on Kelith have reached even the highest councils. Few believed such tales until recently." Elias stepped forward, positioning himself between Vera and Leary. "We didn't ask for any of this," he said evenly. "All we wanted was to survive." Vera tilted her head, studying him intently. "And yet, you chose to risk everything for someone not of your kind. Why?" Elias hesitated, searching for the right words. Finally he simply said, "Because it was the right thing to do." Vera's expression softened ever so slightly, though her glowing eyes betrayed a flicker of intrigue. Few species would act so selflessly. Most would see vulnerability as weakness, an opportunity to exploit. Yet you humans, you defy expectations. Before anyone could respond, Leary stirred. Slowly, she rose from her cot and walked toward Vera, stopping just a few feet away. Her shimmering skin flared faintly, casting soft golden light across the room. For a moment the air seemed to hum with energy, as if the universe itself held its breath. Vera's posture shifted subtly, her rigid form relaxing. "Remarkable," she murmured, almost reverently. "She carries a piece of the cosmos within her, a fragment of creation itself." Elias glanced at Leary, then back at Vera. "What does that mean?" "It means," Vera replied, turning her gaze to the crew, "that she is far more than just a child. She represents balance, a bridge between worlds, and you." She paused, looking at each of them in turn. "You have proven yourselves worthy guardians." The weight of her words settled over the cabin. The crew exchanged stunned looks, unsure whether to feel relieved or overwhelmed. Whatever Leary was, whatever destiny awaited her, they now had an ally in the Galactic Concorde, an organization capable of shielding her from those who sought to harm her. But Elias knew better than to let his guard down completely. "If you're willing to help us," he said cautiously, "then we accept. But make no mistake, we'll do whatever it takes to protect her, even if it means standing against the entire galaxy." Vera smiled faintly, a gesture both enigmatic and reassuring. "That determination is precisely why humanity endures. You may lack strength, but you possess something far greater: heart." As the envoy departed, leaving behind promises of protection and support, the crew allowed themselves a rare moment of relief. They weren't out of danger yet, but for the first time in days, they felt a glimmer of hope. Leary returned to her cat, her glowing light dimming once more as sleep claimed her. Elias watched her quietly, his thoughts drifting to the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just as survivors, but as a family forged in the crucible of adversity. Humanity had always thrived not because of its power, but because of its ability to adapt, endure, and care. And in that moment, Elias realized something profound. The galaxy hadn't saved Leary, it was Leary who was saving the galaxy. Through her light, she reminded everyone, including humanity itself, of the true meaning of strength. Months passed, and the galaxy slowly began to change. Word of Leary's existence and the humans who had protected her spread far and wide. Stories of their bravery on Kelith, their ingenuity in escaping capture, and their unwavering compassion reached corners of the universe where humanity was once dismissed as weak or irrelevant. The Galactic Concorde kept its promise, providing resources and protection while spreading a message of unity among the stars. But it wasn't just their efforts that sparked transformation. It was Leary herself. Her glow, once feared or misunderstood, became a symbol of hope. It represented something greater than any one species: the power of empathy, resilience, and interconnectedness. Wherever Elias and his crew traveled with her, they found themselves greeted not with hostility but curiosity and respect. Other species began to see humanity in a new light, not as fragile scavengers clinging to survival, but as guardians of balance, capable of standing up for what was right even when the odds seemed insurmountable. I grew stronger over time, both physically and emotionally. Though she still couldn't speak human languages fluently, she communicated through gestures, expressions, and her radiant light. She formed a deep bond with each member of the crew, especially Elias, who remained her steadfast protector and guide. In return, she taught them lessons about trust, courage, and the beauty of vulnerability. One evening, as the ship drifted through the quiet expanse of space, Elias stood by the viewport, gazing at the endless sea of stars. Leary joined him, her small hand slipping into his. He smiled down at her. marveling at how much she had changed their lives and, perhaps, the entire galaxy in such a short time. "You've done more than I ever thought possible," he said softly, knowing she wouldn't fully understand, but hoping she'd feel the sincerity in his voice. "You've shown everyone what really matters." She tilted her head, her shimmering eyes reflecting the starlight outside. Then, without warning, she raised her free hand and pressed it gently against the glass of the viewport. Her skin glowed faintly, casting golden ripples across the surface. For a moment, it felt as though the stars themselves responded, twinkling brighter in acknowledgement. Elias chuckled softly, shaking his head in wonder. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Back on Earth, news of their journey reached the planet's leaders, sparking debates and discussions about humanity's role in the galaxy. Some saw Lyri's story as proof of humanity's potential to lead by example. Others viewed it as a reminder of the responsibilities that came with such influence. Debates aside, one thing was undeniable. Humanity's reputation had shifted. They were no longer seen as insignificant or powerless. They were recognized as compassionate, resourceful, and unyielding when it mattered most. In the years that followed, Elias and his crew became legends. Their names were spoken alongside tales of great heroes from other species, celebrated for their selflessness and determination. Yet despite their newfound fame, they never lost sight of why they had started this journey in the first place. They weren't saviors or warriors, they were simply people who cared enough to make a difference. As for Lyri, she eventually found a home among the stars. With the help of the Galactic Concord, a sanctuary was created for her, a safe haven where she could live freely, surrounded by those who understood her unique gifts. The crew visited often, ensuring she never felt abandoned or alone. Each time they left, Elias made her the same promise: "We'll always come back for you." On one of their final visits, Elias stood with Lyri beneath a sky filled with twin suns, much like the ones on Kelith. The air was warm, carrying the scent of alien flowers that bloomed in vibrant colors all around them. Lyri turned to him, her glowing form dimmed now, peaceful and content. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible but clear enough to send shivers down his spine. It was the first time she had spoken directly to him, and the words carried a weight far beyond their simplicity. Elias knelt before her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, thank you. You reminded us of who we are and who we can be." She smiled faintly, then stepped closer to embrace him. As she did, her light flared one last time, bathing the world in warmth and radiance. When it faded, she pulled away, her expression serene. Though neither of them spoke aloud, the connection between them remained unbroken. Years later, long after Elias had retired from adventuring, he returned to the sanctuary to find it thriving. Aliens of all kinds gathered peacefully, drawn by the legend of the little girl who had bridged worlds. In the center of it all stood a statue of Lyri, her arms outstretched and her body aglow with light. Beneath it, an inscription read, *, don't be scared, I'm here. *, it was a phrase that had guided her and humanity through the darkest moments. A simple reminder that sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could ignite the brightest changes. Elias placed a hand on the statue, feeling the cool stone beneath his fingers. Somewhere deep within him, he knew Lyri was still watching over them, her light forever guiding the galaxy toward a brighter future. And so, under the vast canopy of stars, humanity's legacy endured, not as conquerors or rulers but as protectors of hope. For, in the end, it wasn't strength or power that defined them. It was heart. The end.